Now I want to talk about tonal balance control. But before I do, I just want to sort of define our terms. So when we think of a great mix, we think of a mix that's tonally balanced. But what does that mean? So think of tonal balance as the distribution of all the frequencies from the low end to the high end. And great tonal balance means a pleasing distribution of all the frequencies that make up all the instruments and tracks in your mix, or master for that matter. Now we know that people don't have perfect rooms or speakers they can trust, or maybe they don't have that 20,000 hours of ear training to achieve perfect tonal balance in their mixes. So that's why we've created Tonal Balance Control, a brand new plugin that communicates with MixTap, Neutron 2, and Ozone 8, and it gives you a sort of gut check to see if your music is tonally balanced before it either goes to a mastering engineer or if you're mastering it yourself before it goes to the market. So we came up with this concept based on listening and analyzing thousands and thousands of great mixes, and we boiled things down to three categories. So we have three targets, we call them. Modern, think sort of pop and rock music. We have bass heavy, so think EDM, maybe hip hop. And then we have orchestral, which is sort of self-explanatory. On the screen here, we have four quadrants. We have low, mid, and high. These green overlays are the sort of acceptable or typical bounds for the frequency energy in that region. And the little white lines, if I play some audio, you'll see are moving about. And if they're sort of within the typical bounds of the green overlays, then we have pretty good tonal balance for that target. If I switch back to modern, which is more what this track is, we can see where those lines are in the actual green overlays. Now, we can also do some things like alt solo to hear what's happening in the respective quadrants. We can go for a different view, which is a bit more focused, fine view, might give you some more information. And we can go for broad, which is kind of where we started. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, you know what, music doesn't fit into three neat little boxes, and you're not wrong. That's why we added this feature where you can actually bring in one of your tracks that you happen to love, and Tonal Balance Control analyze it almost instantly and come up with a custom target curve for you. And if you have a record that you absolutely love, you can do that too and bring in a cluster of tracks. I'll bring in a whole folder of tracks here. This is one of my favorite albums. It's Funkadelic's Maggot Brain. And I'll just press open. And we can see that it's creating a custom curve for that entire album, which is one of my favorites. It's really well tonally balanced, and I just love it. So there we go. It created a custom target for us based off a cluster of tracks. So if you want, you can actually just not bring a whole folder and just bring one track in that you really love. Here's one that I really love from that record. Just go to Create Custom Target Curve from Audio File. And I'm going to choose Super Stupid, one of my favorites. And it's going to analyze the track and come up with a totally unique target curve for me to sort of strive to when I'm trying to come up with a great tonally balanced song. I'll hit Save Custom Target Curve As, and I'll call it Jeff's Dope Target. There we go. Now it shows up alongside the three targets that I mentioned earlier. Now, for this track, which is the Soft Pyramids track, the Blank Offender one, I'm going to go back to modern just because I find that that's a bit more what this track is about. Now, how do we actually use this plugin? So when I play some audio, I'm going to take a look at what's happening in the four quadrants. I'm seeing in the low, the line's sort of going almost near the top of those green overlays of the boundary of what's kind of an acceptable low end range for the frequencies. I'm also noticing in my crest factor readout here that I'm sort of really well balanced dynamically. What this means is when you see the crest factor portion, if it's too far to the left, your low end, so the crest factor of the low end, the difference between peak and RMS level is maybe a little bit too dynamic. And if it's too far to the right, it's too compressed, and you might need to rethink your track levels or your compression levels, attack and release, that sort of thing. But right now, I'm seeing a nice sort of center picture for the crest factor. However, I'm going sort of out of the bounds of my, my low end overlay here. So instead of actually going to one of the tracks and going to the Neutron to sort of negotiate some of the low end obstacles, I can do all that right from the Tonal Balance Control plugin through inter-plugin communication. So I can bring up the bass, and now I'm seeing the bass's EQ right in tonal balance. I don't have to go to the track. That track through Neutron is communicating to Tonal Balance Control. So now I can play this track again and keep an eye on that low end target and see if that line moves at all, giving me a better sort of low end for this particular target. So I can carve out some space here. We're definitely having some resonant, maybe not resonant peaks, but some pretty peaky stuff here in the waveform. Bring those down a little bit. And the other thing contributing to this sort of going out the boundary of that target might be my kick, which is also occupying space in that low end. So I'll go to my kick track, which I've labeled K, and I'll bring that down a touch too. We don't want to go too far, but watch what's happening. It's the green overlay here. That line has come down kind of precipitously from where it was before. So if I close this little menu here, we see that I'm now well within the sort of target range for that low end, meaning I have a more tonally balanced track. So just for example's sake, I'm going to exaggerate something to show you that it's not just EQ moves that can contribute to a great or really bad tonal balance. So for example, guitars often reside in a mix in the low-mid range. So watch what happens when I bring down all three of these guitar tracks. Watch what happens to my low mids. I'll bring them all down. So we're seeing a dip in the low mids. So this just goes to show you that it's not just EQ moves, but track level also informs the tonal balance, and you can see that reflected very easily in the Tonal Balance Control visual feedback system. Now, Neutron's EQs aren't the only thing that I can affect from Tonal Balance Control. Let's say that I've made a lot of mixing moves and I just want to start mastering. I can do some mastering EQ moves too, right from Tonal Balance Control. So for example, I have Ozone 8 on my master bus, and I've got my equalizer open here, and I'm just going to name this Ozone EQ, and you'll see why in a moment. So earlier we did some work on the bass and the kick with the EQ. Now I can call up my Ozone EQ right from Tonal Balance Control, and there it is. I can start making some moves here, and just to show you how things are sort of mirrored plug-in to plug-in through inter-plug-in communication. When I make some dips on the third node, it dips in Ozone 8. So I can close this because I don't really need it. But I can start making some moves right here, all while keeping an eye and gut checking my tonal balance with Tonal Balance Control. So we talked about integration with Tonal Balance Control through Ozone 8's EQ and Neutron 2's EQ. Well, we can also share information with Tonal Balance Control from instances of MixTap. So if I go over here, I can see that I have a Wurlitzer track and I have a MixTap on there. So I'm going to loop a little section here that features the Whirly right there. And if I bring up this view and play the track and solo it, we can see the Wurlitzer's information right there. So even though I can't action any sort of EQ moves with this, I can see what's happening. So these plugins are at least aware of each other and know what's going on. So this will also help me see if maybe there's some stuff happening in the Wurlitzer track that's contributing to some tonal balance control moves that are sort of out of whack. And in addition to this, I can have MixTap and I can have a bunch of third-party plugins, maybe some Logic plugins on that track, and my moves in Logic will be sharing information with MixTap that will be reflected in Tonal Balance Control. You can get the benefits essentially from Tonal Balance Control if we're not using Neutron 2 or Ozone 8, if we're just using MixTap and some third-party plugins. So through inter-plugin communication, all of this sort of crosstalk is possible.